Here's some of your old clothes. You could have just said no thank you.
What are you doing here, Frank?
Coming to get you.
No, thank you.
Listen,
Sir,
I'm his father.
you want to go with your dad?
Nope.
You can't force her if you don't want to. Excuse us.
It's for Mom. We have to do something for her.
What you want?
Well, near the end, she made me promise that you and I, together, would take a trip and spread her ashes over a lake.
What lake?
Lake Holland, it's back east.
Back east? Why?
Well...
Where?
I,
New York? Massachusetts?
No, further east.
Why would Mom want to be buried in Ireland anyway?
I don't know. She was dying. She could barely breathe. Some things you don't question, you just do.
No, you don't question, you just do.
Listen, if we do this, you'll never have to see me again.
Well, that's a clip from End of Sentence. I'm delighted to say one of its stars, John Hawkes, is joining us. John, I'm not quite sure where you are. Where are you, sir? What can you tell us?
Oh, I'm in Los Angeles, California here. It's kind of a warm day for this time of year. Going to get a little hot for a couple of days. But it'll cool off after. Yeah, I mean, I'm not bragging. It's a little warm.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking to the UK where, guess what? It's not particularly. So
it's horrible and rainy. It's snow. There's snow here. There's a horrible.
That's better. That's much better. Now,
yeah.
End of Sentence. Now, this is taking you back really because I think this premiered at the Edinburgh Festival in 2019. So, how long ago did you make End of Sentence?
Was it really 2019? My God. I think it would have been summer 18, I believe.
So, to be honest, John, you barely remember this film.
I don't remember. What's the title again? I don't remember really. I remember plenty. By God, I remember plenty. Ask away.
Okay, so take us into End of Sentence. You play Frank Fogel. Just introduce us to the story here.
Sure. It's a story of two Americans, a father and son. The son's just getting out of prison, and the father is trying to convince the son to go overseas to dump his recently deceased wife's ashes in a lake in Northern Ireland. And that's where it takes off. And then it's a father and son who really detest each other, I guess we could say. And their
yes, that's right.
And their difficult adventures in Ireland and in negotiating their own grief and frustration and rage, I suppose.
Yeah, so the movie ends in Ireland, but it starts in an Alabama jail, which is an interesting combination. Your son is played by Logan Lerman. So what's gone wrong in this relationship? It's quite clear within a matter of minutes that your character, Frank, and your son, Sean, are damaged in some way. But what can you say about what's gone wrong in their relationship, John?
Well, it's addressed in the film a good bit in their backstory of him just being a troubled kid, of a kid who is a real handful, I guess you'd say, for parents to try to deal with, and he's screwed up enough times that he's actually ended up in prison. And the character I play, Frank, is I think you describe him as a fairly straight-laced, guy who is disappointed in his son's choices, I would say, and vice versa, it turns out.
Yes, but what's interesting, what makes the movie interesting from start to finish, John, is I think one of the reasons is that Frank is very layered, and although he's straight-laced, he's very complex, and I think it's fair to, I think we can say, he has some fairly terrible secrets in there as well. So I imagine that's what made you interested in playing him.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to have a guy who I think suppresses so much. I mean, that's one of the interesting things about being an actor as an approach is, for me, I often try to figure out what is the deepest truth of the character and then try to cover that up with as many layers as I can and let it just, peek through in the chink in the armor once in a while. And Frank was certainly a guy like that. He's hiding a lot. There's such an awkward decency about him, though, that I really loved, and a kind of a strained calm, and a man who's just trying to control what he really can't. I love playing characters who are ill-equipped to solve the problems they're trying to tackle, and certainly Frank has a long way to go to try to figure out how to find some peace and some resolution in his life.
Yeah,
so that's a great part to play. I'm glad you saw him as a complex guy. I did too.
Yeah, and he's a long way to go, and that's from Alabama to Ireland is the long distance that you travel. But there's an interesting dynamic, and maybe it's an interesting power dynamic, John. The fact that it's so you go from Alabama, you end up in Ireland, but it's directed by an Icelandic guy called Elfa. Is it Elva Adelstein?
Yeah, Elvar Adelsteins. If you're a bad mispronouncer of
Yeah.
Icelandic, as I am.
Is this his debut feature, John?
It is, yes. So he'd written and directed a short called Sailcloth, starring John Hurt.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful piece, and that was one of the reasons I was keen to jump aboard and do the movie.
So the power dynamic is what I'm intrigued with here. So obviously part of it is done in the States, but then the rest of it is done in Ireland. So you're many miles, thousands of miles away from home. You're with a director who's never directed before. You are an Academy Award nominee with experience going back decades. If you have an idea for this movie or an idea for the way Frank is going to progress, I'm imagining that Elvira is going, sure, that's why I asked you to do this. That's what I want.
Well, partly. And I think a good director will do that. I think a huge amount of directing a movie is who you put in it, is who you cast. But Elvar also, to his credit, had I had a lot of questions, and to his credit, he had ideas. We never, he and Logan and I spent a great deal of time. It was really handy being on location because every Sunday afternoon we would get together and discuss the week's work ahead, and have a lot of questions answered when we got on set, which is key when you're, don't have a ton of money or time. Yeah, I remember walking home early on after dinner, and I like to try to kind of crystallize any story I'm in into a word or two, if I can, the character I'm playing, and then the story as a whole. And I was walking along with Elvar, and I said, I feel like this movie is really about forgiveness, and he said, I think it's about acceptance, and that was a great jumping off point for me, just as far as figuring out what we were trying to achieve. I mean, you don't really make a movie and say we're going to lay into this theme or anything like that, or the metaphors or anything else. You make the film, but you're aware certainly of elements of the story that you're trying to illustrate and tell. And so I think that was an interesting word for me to grab a hold and chew on a bit and try to figure out how to forge ahead with in the project.
So the way you're describing it, that sounds like quite a collaborative relationship.
Very much so. Yes, very much so. We again, the kind of the idea was we don't have answers, but we just want to keep asking the right questions. And I think that when you're a creative person, when you set out and say this is exactly what I'm going to make, and I'm not going to deviate from it, that can work. But I think there's a lot of room for, particularly in making films, which is such a collaborative art form, that you need a lot of minds keeping an eye on it, I think, in a way. And that can go one of two ways. If people are really have very kind of diverse opposing opinions, that's going to be a problem. But if you get people who are willing to, hopefully, once you begin to tell the story eventually tells you what it wants. It's a strange way to put it, I guess. But, when you shoot the first scene of a movie, you're working out of just nothingness and thin air, and then you shoot the first scene, and then you begin to add the pieces around it like a puzzle, and it begins to kind of tell you how to approach the material, hopefully, if the material is strong and the people you're working with are strong. And I think that was the case here too, in a strange way, that the story tells you what you begin to tell the story, and then the story tells you what to do. And I feel like that through our collaboration we got there on this one.
It sounds like you're in the middle of a movie set and there's a helicopter that's about to land and whisk you off somewhere.
Enjoying the hot weather, and decided to come inside and avoid the helicopter.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hollywood, California, where there are lots of helicopters. So.
Do you think it's fair to say, John, that actually all of what you said is true, and it is a road trip? Your character and Logan's character, but they have the sharp edges that keep us interested. But occasionally there are some farce-like scenes, because you're taking this urn of ashes back to Ireland. Is that fair to use the F word, to call it that there are some scenes that are farcical?
I think so. You've got to have humor. I think in nearly everything you do as a creative person, there's got to be some sense of the absurdity of life, I think. And certainly there are some elements you might describe as farcical in this film. Yes. I think that if you want people to feel something, get them to laugh first. I think it opens us up as human beings to be able to receive deeper, more nuanced kinds of feelings.
Yeah. I wonder if this is one of the movies that Frances McDormand was I don't know if she's seen this, but you were with her in Three Billboards. But when she got the Oscar just a few days ago, as we're speaking now, and she was talking about encouraging everyone to go and see as many movies as possible on the big screen. Maybe this comes in that category, John, because some of the shots are glorious.
I agree. It's such a beautiful part of the world. I feel like it's captured pretty well. They didn't want to make a postcard of Ireland, which I appreciated, but there are some really gorgeous shots and such fine actors there in the country as well. Yeah, I think it would play really well on a big screen. I'm sorry I didn't get much of a chance for that. It came out very early in the COVID crisis last year. So I hope people would go see it on a big screen. I hope it'll be playing somewhere. I guess worst case we watch a lot of things on small screens. It's not so bad either.
Are you ready to go back to the cinema? And do you get the sense that in the States people are ready to go back to the cinema? They're opening up here. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan in a couple of weeks' time. But do you get the sense that people are ready to go back to the movies, John?
We're just so on the edge of it all. I think we want to jump ahead, as is very human, and just kind of have it done with. But I don't think it's quite done with. And if we can continue to get our herd immunity up, a word I've never used before in an interview about movie making, but if we can get that further along and get people vaccinated, hopefully we can get closer to where we were. I still think we got a little ways to go, but it's a lot better than it was a year ago. And hopefully we'll all be sitting next to each other in the movies soon. I hope so. It's hard to make predictions, but hopefully that time is near.
But just on that, if this weekend someone said there's a screening in LA, it's 100-seater, it's going to be full, would you feel happy to go, or would you think, no, actually, I'm going to wait a bit longer?
Am I in the movie and is it really good? I'm joking. No, I probably, if I was in the movie, I definitely wouldn't go. But no, I don't think I'd honestly feel super comfortable about that right now. But I'm 61 years old, and if I was younger, I would feel differently about it. I didn't have quite as much sense as I do now. But I think to each their own. That's what makes a horse race. I think those who are feeling comfortable should do what they do as safely as they can. I'm certainly out there. I walked into a bookstore yesterday for the first time in a really long time. That was enjoyable. Slowly kind of creeping back into the world. But yeah, I wouldn't sit in a movie theater yet myself, but I'm happy for those who will. And I know that eventually we've all got to try to take some risks, and but not quite there yet, but soon.
Yeah.
How about you?
Very interesting. I'm supposed to be going to see Quiet Place 2, one of the movies that they've been holding on to for a long time. And there's a screening very shortly, and it's in a screening room. And I'm thinking, well, I probably have to go because I want to do the interview. And I love the first movie so much. So I'm thinking I've had two vaccinations. So I'm thinking it's probably time, mask on. Hopefully all the social distancing will happen. But I think I probably have to now. Yes.
And I think if I was in a position where, from a professional standpoint, I needed to be there, I would probably do the same. I think you've been vaccinated. That's fantastic. I hope the movie's amazing, and I'll be right behind you.
Okay. Thanks. And I'll tell him that when I go in, I shall say John Hawkes is right behind me. So I need a +1. John, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. Take care. Best to you.